Hi friends, I'm Parvez and welcome to my new course on working with Flask and ReactJS. Now, before starting our main topic, if you want to support my works, you can just support me on my Patreon page. I have added the link in the video description. Now, so you can see that this is my front-end codes and this is my backend. So I've created my backend REST API in Flask, and after that I'm going to integrate that with the ReactJS. Now let's check that what we are going to build. So for example, in here I'm going to just click on the insert article, and now I can add a new article. So I can just say welcome to Flask and ReactJS course for beginners, and I can just add a description like this, and I can just click on the insert, and you can see the data is added in here, and I have my new data in here. And now if you see my I'm using MySQL database. If you see MySQL database, I have this new data. So welcome to Flask and ReactJS. Now I can update this. So let me just refresh my page. So now you can see that I have two data in here. Now if I click on the update, I have a new form in here, and I want to update this. So for example, I can just say a course, and I can just say updated, and if I click on the update, you'll see, now you can see that this is updated. And if you see my MySQL database, and you can see that this is also updated. Now for example, I want to delete this. I want to delete my for example, one of data that I have. I want to delete this. If I click on this, you will see that the data is deleted and I don't have that data. And if I check my MySQL database, I don't have that data. Now let's just start our course. Now let's create our backend API. For this, we need to install some libraries. So the first one is Flask. As you know, it's a simple framework for building complex web application, and it's Flask is a lightweight WSGI web application framework. It is designed to make getting started quick and easy. So now Flask is a micro framework, and it's powerful. After Django, it's the second most popular web framework for Python programming language. Now, first of all, you need to install Flask. You can just use pip install Flask, and in here, so I've already created a virtual environment, and you can just say pip install Flask. And after installation of the Flask, we need another extension or library that's called Flask SQLAlchemy, and it's an extension for Flask that adds support for SQLAlchemy to your application. And it aims to simplify using SQLAlchemy with Flask by providing useful defaults and extra helpers. So we need to install this, and we can just copy this and pip install Flask SQLAlchemy. So after installation of the SQLAlchemy, because we are using MySQL database, then we need to install MySQL client. Now you can set up Flask SQLAlchemy with different databases like Postgres, SQLite, MySQL database, and particularly we want to use MySQL database. Now for that, you need to install MySQL client. So we can just say pip install MySQL client, and now we are waiting for this. Okay, Flask SQLAlchemy has been installed. Now MySQL client, and after MySQL client, we need to install Flask Marshmallow. Now it is Flask Marshmallow is a thin integration layer for Flask, and Marshmallow is an object serialization or deserialization library that adds additional features to Marshmallow, including URL and hyperlinks fields. So because before sending the data to the front end, we need to serialize the data. For that, we are going to use Flask Marshmallow. So we can just use pip install Flask Marshmallow for the installation. Also, because we are using SQLAlchemy, also it's good to install Marshmallow SQLAlchemy. And okay, now the installation has been completed. Now let's create our first Flask application. So I've created a folder at the name of backend, and here I'm going to just create a new file, and I'm going to just call it app.py. So the first thing is that we need to import Flask. So we can just say from Flask we are going to import Flask. Now after doing this, we need to create the object of the Flask, so we can just say Flask, and we can pass underscore name like this. Okay, now let's create our route, so we can just say app.route. Now if you don't know about the Flask, I have a complete 4 hours training on Flask web development. I have added the link to the video description, you can just check it. So we're going to just use index, and we can just give methods. Now by default, if you don't give any method, that's get. So but we want to give it explicitly. And after that, we're going to just say def get, or for example we can just say def get articles. Now we can just first we need to import JSONify, so JSONify, and in here we can return JSONify, and we can just say hello world. Now if you're using Flask as a full stack, then in here you can render your template, but because we are using Flask just as our backend, so for right now we are going to just say return this hello world. Now after doing this, now we need to run our Flask application. So in here we can just say underscore name underscore main, and we can just say app.run, and we want to make the debug to true. Now if you're in the production level, then you don't need to add this. Because we are in the development mode, we can just make the debug to true. Now there are different ways that you can run your Flask application in Visual Studio Code. The easiest way is that we can just, in here we can just press F5, and from here we can choose Flask, and you can just copy the backend path, that where your app.py is located, and you can just paste it in here, and after that hit enter. Now we are waiting for the running of the Flask or Flask application, and you can see it will run in the debug console. It will run the Flask application, and we can just wait for this. So now you can see it running on this local host. Now let's just check this, and we can just say localhost port 5000, and now you can see that we have hello world in here. Now if I change this to get, you will see that I am receiving an error, because right now the route is changed and it's not index, it's for example get. So you can give it whatever you want, but for example in here I want it should be get. Now if I check this, so now you can see that not found, and if I go to the get, you can see that we are receiving hello world. Now let's just test this with the postman, and I'm going to just copy and paste it in here. So the method is get, and we can send. So now you can see that we are receiving hello world in here. And now we want to create our database and table. So as I've already said that we are using MySQL database. So for that I'm using WAMP server, and I have opened my PHP myadmin, and in here I'm going to create a new database. So you can just call it whatever. So for example I'm going to just call it, for example, Flask, or we can just say Flask backend, we can just say Flask. So after that click on the create. So now you can see the database is created. Right now there's no table in this database because we want to create the tables using SQLAlchemy. So now let's just create our table. So the first thing is that we need to import the SQLAlchemy. So we can just say from Flask SQLAlchemy import SQLAlchemy. And now let's create this in here. We need to add our configuration. So the first one is we can just say app.config, and in here we can just say SQLAlchemy database URI. Okay, now in here you need to choose what database you want. So if you see the SQLAlchemy documentation, there are different databases. You can see that this is the database URI that you need to add. So let me just make it like this. So SQLAlchemy database URI, and after that if you come down, you can see that there are different databases, Postgres, MySQL, and they have different configuration. So we can just copy this and we can add this in here like this. So this is the MySQL. For example, if you're using SQLite, you can change this to SQLite, or Postgres, you can change this to Postgres. So in my case it's MySQL. I'm choosing MySQL. After that you need to give the username, so that's root, and I don't have any password for that, so I can just leave it blank. This is localhost, and this is the database name, that is Flask. Also we need to just add another configuration, even though it's not important, but if you don't add this you'll receive a warning. And in here we can just say track, so track, and we can just say modifications. So SQLAlchemy track modifications, and we want to make this to false. So now we have created our configuration, and after doing this in here we can just say db SQLAlchemy, and we need to pass the app in here. Now it's time to create our table. Right now we have our database, our Flask database, but there is no table. So we can create our class, and I'm going to just call it, for example, article, or you can just say article, so whatever you want. And it extends from db.model. After this you need to specify the fields that you want. So I want it should be an ID field, db.column, and it is db.integer, and I want the primary key should be true. Now let's create another one that is title, and db.column, and this is db.text, not text. For this we are going to use a string, and we want to specify, for example, 100 character. Let's just copy this. So another one is this is text, and I don't need this 100 in here. Also we can add a date, so date db.column db.datetime, and we can add a default for this. And first we need to import datetime. We can just say import datetime, datetime.now. So now let's create our init method in here. So init, and we are going to add our title and description in here. So this is also not title, but this is description. Okay, or we can just say body. So you can just give, for example, I'm going to just give it body. So body. So we're going to add our title and body in here, and the idea is about to create it. And also we don't need to add the date because it is it will be added automatically when we create our, for example, our articles. Now let's just say solve dot title. We want to initialize this, so solve dot title to title and solve dot body to the body. So now we have created our table, but right now this table is not added to our database that we have created, to our Flask database. Now we need to add this, so for that we can just change to the backend, change directory to the backend, and we can just open our Python terminal. And in here the first thing is that you need to, from app, we are going to import db. So after importing the db, and you can just easily say db dot create all. And now let's check this Flask database. You can see that we have a table of articles with the fields of ID, title, body, and also date. Alright guys, now we have created our database and also tables. Now it's time to serialize our data. So for this we have already said that we are using Flask Marshmallow, and it's a library or extension that's used for serialization or deserialization of the data. Now before sending the data to the front end, we need to serialize that. So first we need to import Flask Marshmallow. So from Flask Marshmallow we are going to import Marshmallow, and in here we need to create the object of Marshmallow, and we can pass the app in here. So after doing this we need to create our schema. So in here I can create class article schema, and we can just say marshmallow.schema. And after doing this we can create our class meta. Now we can specify the fields that we want to serialize, so we can just add ID, so title, we have body, and we have date. And after doing this, now let's create our schema object in here. So we can just use article schema, and this is article schema. Now this is for one article. For example, if you want to serialize one article, then we can use this article schema. Now for example, if you want to serialize a query set, for that we need to use money to true. So we can just copy this and paste it in here, and we need to add money to true in here. And let's change this to article schema. So after doing this, now let's create our route. So right now we have just get article route, and we want to create another route that's for adding the article. So right now in here it's just returning a JSON file. Okay, now in here we can just say, let me copy this from here, and we can paste it in this section. This is add, and the method is post, and let's just say diff add article. So we need to import request in here, so we can just say import request, and so let's create the title, and we can just say request.json. We need to pass the title, and we can just copy this one for the body. So body, and this should be body. So after doing this, we need to create the object of our table, class table. So that is class articles. So in here we can just say, for example, articles, and we can pass the title and also the body in here. After doing this, we need to add this to the database, so we can just say db.session.add, and we want to add the articles. And also we need to commit the database. So db.session.commit, and at the end we can just return post schema. So because it's just one article, so for that we need to just return not post schema, sorry, article schema. So we can just say article schema dot JSONify, and we can pass our this articles. So now the add article is it's prepared to okay, now I'm going to open my Postman, and in here let's just copy this. Let's create another tab, and we are going to check that we can add something in here or not. Let's just change this to post, and we can grab this. So go to the body, and after the body we want to choose the row, and from here it should be JSON, and this is the title. So this is the title, and we can copy this. We need to add a body or description. We can say this is the body. So now let's just send. Okay, now you can see that we are receiving 200 OK, and we have, this is the body, we have the date, this is the date, this is the ID, and this is the title. And now if we get our this okay, now right now we cannot get because we haven't created the get route till now. So if you see now your database table articles, we have a new data with ID 1 in here. Now we can add another one, so let's just add another one. This is the second title, this is the second body, and we can just send. You can see that the ID 2 is added, and now if we check Flask, so let me just check the articles, you can see that we have another data with the second ID in this section. So this was the adding. Now let's change the get articles, because in here we want to just get the article instead of JSONify. So now we can just say all articles, and we can just say articles dot query dot all. We want to query over all articles, and after doing this we are going to just create results, and we can just add our schema in here. So articles schema, so because this time we are going to use a query set, so for that we need to just use the articles schema, and we can just say dot dump, and we want to add our all articles in here. And after that we can just say return JSONify the results. So now let's just check this, that we can get our 2 articles or not. So this time we can just go to the get. So now if I request the get, so you can see that I am receiving the 2 articles in here with, so this is the first one, then this is the second one. And also if you go to the local host, now you can see that we have the 2 articles in here. Now let's create another route, and that's for getting the specific details of the article according to ID. For right now, if I for example get the first article, and if I send, you'll see that I am receiving error, and you can see that I'm receiving error. So for that we need to create another route in here, and I'm going to just copy this, and paste it in here. And so this should be get, and we want to get according to the ID, and the method is get. So now let's just say diff, for example, post details or whatever you want, and we can pass ID in here. And now let's just say post, or we can just say article, so for one article, and we can just say articles dot query dot get. We are going to use get, and we want to get that according to the specific ID. And now we can just return, because it's one, so for that we can just use article schema dot JSONify, and now we can pass the article in here. So now this time if I hit this URL and the postman, you'll see that I'm not receiving any error, and I will receive the first ID article. So now let's just check this. So now let's just send. Now you can see that I'm receiving the first article in here. If I change this to second, and if I send, you can see that I'm receiving the ID2 data. And if I get, you can see that I'm receiving the whole data, so the first ID and the second ID in here. Let's work on our update functionality. So let me just copy this route, and at the bottom we are going to create our update. So we can change this to update. We want to update according to the ID, and the method is put. Okay, now let's create our div update article, and we want to pass the ID. So the first thing is that we need to get the article, and we can just say articles dot query dot get, and we want to get a specific article according to the ID, so we can pass our ID in here. After that we need to get the title and also the body, so we can just say request, so request dot JSON, and this is title, and we want to do the same for the body, so request dot JSON, and this is body. Now we need to set our title and also body, so we can just say article dot title to the title, and article dot body, this should be body. And at the end we need to just commit the database, and we want to return our article schema because it's just one article, so we want to use article schema dot JSONify, and we can pass the article like this. So now let's check this update, and for this let me just copy this from here, and we can create a new tab, and let's just add this in this section, and this should be update, and I want to update the first one. And also let's also copy the data from here. So let me just copy this, or we will change the ID. So we can just go to the body. After that we can choose row, and from here we need to choose JSON. And so let me just remove this ID, because ID and date, so we want it should be just body and title. So body updated and title updated. Now let's just send, and we are receiving error. Let's check that where is the error. Oh, and the error is this, it's not get, it is put. Sorry for this. And now let's just send this again, and now you can see that this is the second body updated, and also we have the title. This is also updated. And now if you get this, so you can see updated body and title updated, and also the same will be for the our MySQL database. And if you see, we will see the newly updated data in here. Let's just go to the Flask, and you can see that this is updated. You can see this is updated, and also this is updated. And the last functionality is deleting the data. So now let's create data. I'm going to just copy this, and I can add this in here. So this is delete, and we want to delete according to the ID, and the method is delete. Now let's create article delete, and we want to delete according to the ID. Let's just get the articles, so we can use the articles dot query dot get. We can pass the ID, and now we can just say db dot session dot delete, and we want to delete the article. And at the end we also want to commit, so dot commit, and we can just return post article schema dot JSONify, and we can pass the article. So article, so it is db the article. Now let's just check this URL endpoint in the Postman, and so we can create a new tab, and in the new tab we can just copy this. We want to delete the first one, the first ID. Let's change this to delete, and change this to delete. Now let's just send, and now you can see that we are receiving 200 OK. And now if I get again, you will see that I have just one. You can see that I have just one data with ID 2, and if you see in here, you can see I have one data, and the same will be for the MySQL database, and you'll see that the first data is gone, and that is deleted. Now let's just work on our frontend, and we are going to use ReactJS. So now if you see ReactJS documentation, it's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. Now if you don't know about ReactJS, I have a complete 4 hours training on ReactJS and React hooks. I have added the link in the video description. You can just check that video also. Now let's just install this. So before installing of ReactJS, you need to install Node.js, and after installation of the Node.js, now we can install the ReactJS. So now there are different ways that you can use, but we are using npx. So you can just use npx create React app, and after that you need to give the name of your React application. So now let me just copy this, and let me just open my Visual Studio Code, and in here I'm going to just call it frontend, and after that hit enter. So now it will take some time, and we are waiting for the completion of the installation. Alright guys, now the installation has been completed. We can change the directory to the front end, and after that we can just say npm start, and you can see that we have a front end folder in here, and we can just say npm start. Okay, now let's just talk about these files. So we have a front end folder. After that we have node modules. This is the place that our modules has been installed. We have a public folder, and in here we have icons, and we have index.html file, and you can see that in here we have div id, root, and after this we have logos, and we have manifest.json, and this is the important folder. We have source folder, we have app.css, and this is the css codes, and after that we have app.js, and this is the important file that we'll work on this. You can see that we have a functional component in here. Now there are two types of components. You can use class components and also functional component. Now if you don't know about ReactJS, you can just watch my complete series about for our training course on ReactJS. I have added the link in the video description, and you can see that we have div class name app, and this is the CSS code that we have in here, so .app, and also we have app header, and you can see that in the app.js we have app header, and we have a logo in here. Also you can see we have, this is for testing, we have index.css, and we have index.js file, and in here you can see that our app's mounted, and this app was in here, and also you can see that we have our logo, and this is the package.json where the module is installed. You can see that in here we have scripts, and you can use, for example, start for running, you can build, you can test, you can eject, and this is the React version, React DOM version, React script, and these are the files that we have in here. And now you can see that our development server is running, and now if you see in the localhost port 3000 we have our ReactJS app. Now this is the code that we have in the app.js. So if I change this to, for example, welcome to Flask and ReactJS full stack, and so now you will see that we have this in here. And now you can see that we have welcome to Flask and ReactJS full stack. Alright guys, now let's fetch our data from our Flask backend to the ReactJS frontend. Now if you see, we have just one data for right now, with the body, with the title, and also ID. Now before that let's just bring some changes to this design. So right now if you see, this is our React application, and what I want to do is to just remove these codes from here, because I don't need these codes. And let me just remove this, and in here I'm going to just create an h1 tag, and I can just say Flask and ReactJS course. Okay, now after doing this, what you want to do is to also we need to bring some change to our this design. So right now if you see, we have Flask and ReactJS course. Now let's just open our app.css, and so in here we are going to just remove these two because we don't need this, and we want to add this background color and also this mean height in here, and also we can just change the text color, and like this. Also, we want to just add padding. We can just say padding at 20 pixel. Now we don't need this app header because we have removed this, and we don't need this. Even we don't need this .app link, and let's just remove this. Let's just open our app.js, and in here we don't need this logo because we have removed this logo like this. Okay, so after giving this our design, and if you see, you can see we have Flask and ReactJS course, and also let me just open our app.css. So this is the color, padding 20 pixel. Okay, and we didn't need this text align center. Okay, now we want to fetch our data in the app.js. So for this we are using hooks in our this course. Now if you see ReactJS documentation, now hooks are new addition in React 16.8. They let you use state and other React features without writing a class. Now there are different hooks that you can use, and if you're new to ReactJS, I have a complete video series about 4 hours training on ReactJS and React hooks. I have added the link in the video description. You can just check that video, and you know about React. Now we will use state hooks and also use effect hooks. Now if you see in here, you can declare the state hook like this: const. You need to give the variable and also the method, and after that you need to initialize the value in here. And if you come down, you can see that we call it inside a function component to add some local state to it. Now when you're going to create hooks, you need to define your hooks inside the functional component. For example, we cannot create this outside of this component. We need to add the hooks in here. And also you can see React will preserve the state between re-renders, and use state returns a pair, a pair of value. So you can see it returns now the current state value. Now this is the current state value, and also a function that lets you to update it. So using this function we can update this count. Now let's create our so first we need to import this in here. So we can just say import use state from React, and now let's also we need use effect. And if you come down, we have saw use state, and let's just talk about the use effect hook. Now if I come down, you can see that you have likely performed the data fetching, subscriptions, or manually changing the DOM from React component before. We call these operations side effects. Now it means that you can use effect hooks for the side effects. For example, fetching data or subscriptions, or manually changing the DOM, or we can say our effects for short, because they can affect other components and can be done during rendering. Now the effect hook, use effect hook, adds the ability to perform side effects from a function component. Also we need to create use effect hooks inside the function, and it serves the same purpose as component did mount. Now if you're familiar with the class component, when you want to fetch some data, you need to use component did mount, and you can fetch the data in component did mount. Now in ReactJS, when we are using functional component, we can use effect hooks. And now let's just you can see that this is the syntax. You can use effect, and after that you can just use your code in here. And Now let's just create this. Also we need to import a use effect, and first we need to create our state in here, so we can just say const articles, and also a function or a method for changing of this article. So we can just say set articles, and after that we can just use state. So use state hooks. Now in here you can specify the initial volume. So in here you can use object or array. In here I'm using an empty array. So after this, now let's just create our use effect in here. So use effect, and it is an arrow function. Also, because we want to fetch the data just once, by this reason we need to add an array dependency in here. If you don't add this, it will fetch the data in every render. Now because we want to it should be used just once, so by this reason we are going to add an empty array in here. Now we are going to use fetch. You can use fetch or Axios, but I'm using fetch in here. I can just say fetch. We can just give the HTTP, and we want to just use this, or you can give it HTTP localhost. So I can just say HTTP, and so this is my local port, and we want get. Now if you see our app.py, and let me just come down, so you can see that this is my get route, and in here I'm querying over the articles, and I want to get all articles. Now if you see my MySQL database, I have just one data in here, because in here you can see that using the get route, it's returning me just one data in here. And now my Flask database, after that I'm clicking on the articles, and you can see that I have just one data in here. So we want to fetch that. And now in the app.js, so we are using get, and after that we need to give the methods in here. So the method, and the method is get, and also we need to pass the headers. So we can just say headers, and in here we can just say content type, and let's just say application/JSON. Now it will return a promise, so we can just grab that in the catch block. So we're receiving a response, and then the response we can just convert this to the JSON, so response.json, and we can just create another .then, and in here we can just say response. For right now we can just log, so we can just say console.log the response, and if there was an error we can just grab that in the catch block, error, and so console.log the error. Okay, now let's just check this, that it's working or not. So now if I inspect the element, I should see the data, or no, I'm seeing error in here. Now if you go to the console, you can see that it's telling that access to fetch from origin has been blocked by course policy. Now we need to install another library that's called Flask course. Now you can use pip install Flask course, and it will be installed. So I've already installed it. After installation you need to open your app.py file, and at the top first you need to import this. So we can just say from Flask course import course, and in here we can just say course, and we can pass our app. Okay, now let's check, and this time we will not receive any error, and we will see the data. So now let's check, and let's just refresh our page. So again we are receiving an error because and here we need to add our port, so it's port 5000 and /get. Now we will not receive any error. Okay, now you can see that we have our data in here, and you can see welcome to Flask and ReactJS course, and this is the first data that we have in here. Okay, now we want to show our data in our front end. So instead of console.log, what we want to do is we have created our use state hooks in here. So we have articles and set articles. So we want to set this response to this articles, and after that, using this articles variable, we can access to the data. So now instead of console.log in here, we can just say set articles, and we can pass response in here, and now we can access to data. And let me just come down in here. So we have our Flask and ReactJS course, and in this section we want to iterate over the articles. So we can just say articles dot map, so article, and now in here we want to just return we need to create a div, and let me just close this div. First we need to add when we are iterating over, for example, over an array, or when you're using map, you need to add an ID or key. So for this we can, in here we can just say div key, and we can, because we have an ID for our this articles. If you see our app.py in the models, we have an ID in here, and we can just say article.id, and after this we need to create an h2 tag. So we can just say h2. We want to just say article.title. Now if you see our model, we have title, we have body, and also we have date. So article.title, and we have a p tag, and in the p tag we have article.body, and for right now let's check. You can add the date, and I will add that. So for right now, let me just check the article.title and also article.body. Or let's also add the date in a p tag. So let me just add, and I can just say article.date. So we have article, we need to we are iterating over the articles. Now this is the articles that we are receiving from our state, and after iterating we are adding the ID, and we want to render the title, the body, and also the date. Now if you see, you can see now we have our one data in here. This is the title, this is the body, and this is the date that we have. For example, I'm going to add another data from my this PHP my admin, and let me just click on the insert. I think I can add it from here. So I'm not going to give the ID because it's auto increment. And for the title, so this is the second title for Flask and ReactJS, and for the body we can just say this is the second body, and let's just copy like this, and we can add a date time. Let's just, for example, from here we can choose any date or time and click on go. So now the data is added. If we see, we have two data in here. Now if I refresh my page, you can see that I have another data in here. So this is the second title, and this is the second body. Alright guys, now we have fetched the data from our Flask backend to the ReactJS frontend, and you can see that this is our two data. And now this is not methods, this is method. Let me just correct it. So right now you can see that we have our use effect hooks in our app.js file, and also we have these for example articles, titles in our app.js. Now it will be good to create a new component, and we want to just copy these codes and bring these codes on that components. So we want to separate our code. So for this, in the source folder we want to create a new folder at name of components, and in the components we want to create a new file, a new component at name of article list.js. So it will be a functional component. Now I've already installed an extension, let me just show you, that is ES7 React Redux. You can install this. So now you can easily create functional and also class components using that extensions. For example, if I write RFCE, you can see we have functional component, and if I say RCE, you'll see that I have a class component. Now I want functional components, so for this I can just use RFCE. And after doing this, what I want to do is to just copy some codes from my app. Let me just, okay, now copy this codes from app.js and bring that to the article.js, and after that using the props we can feed the data. Now let me just grab this. Okay, now so I want to add this code in here. Okay, now if you see in here right now we have articles.map, but we don't have articles in our article list.js. The articles is located in our app.js, and if you see in here we have our state, use state, so set articles, and also we can access to the data using this articles. Now this article is not located in the article list.js, but it is in our app.js component. Now we want to send this articles using the props. Now using props we can send some information or some data from our parent component to the child component, and we want to do this in here. So now the first thing is that we need to add props in here, and like this. And first we need to check that we have the articles in the props, so we can just say props.articles. If we have, we are going to iterate over the articles. Now we have props.articles. Now we need to add this article list.js in our app.js. So for this we need to just use import article list from components, and it is article list. Okay, so now we can add this article list in here in this section. So you can just say article list like this. Okay, so now if I see my React application, I will receive an error. Now you can see that I'm receiving error. Articles is not defined in the article list.js. So we have articles in here. We have used props, but we need to send this articles from our app.js. Now we have added this in here. Now in here we can just say articles. We are using articles, and after that we can access this articles in our article list.js using the props. So you can see in here we are using props, and in here we need to just use props.articles. So you can just say props.articles.map. So now let's check now, and now you can see that we have our data and there is no problem. Now we have a clean code. We have a new component for the article list.js, and we have added that in our app.js. Alright guys, now let's learn that how we can update our data. So we have already learned that how you can fetch the data. Now it's time to talk about updating the data. Now before starting our main topic, because we're using Bootstrap, so for that you need to install Bootstrap. So you can just use npm install Bootstrap, and after that hit enter. So now I'm waiting for the installation of the Bootstrap. Okay, now Bootstrap has been installed, and after that, so let me just run my ReactJS application again. Now we need to just go to the index.js, and we need to add our this installed Bootstrap. So in here I can just say import Bootstrap dist, and we can just say css bootstrap.main.css. Okay, now let's just open our article list.js, because we are going to create two buttons for every article, one update and one delete. So for right now we're going to just work on the update, but we will also work on the delete button. So now article list is the good place that we want to add our this functionality. Okay, now up in here, so this is my after this article title and article body and article date, I'm going to create my div class name, and I'm going to just use row. Let's close the div, and let's create another div class name, and it is call md1. Let's close the div. So in here I'm going to create my button, and I can just say button class name, and it is btn primary, and let's just close button, not div. So button, and also we need to create another button for the delete. We can just give this update. Let me just remove this call md1, and this should be danger, and this is delete. Now let's check that we have these two buttons or not. So now we can see we have two buttons, update and also delete. Now let's add an HR tag in here. So after these divs, we can just say HR. Okay, not GR, but it is HR. Now let's add an on click for our this update button. So on click, and this is an arrow function, and in here I can just say edit article, and I can pass article as parameter in here. Now let's create this edit article. So in here I can just say const edit article, and I can pass article. Now in here what I want to do is to I will create another method, and that method will be on app.js, and on the app.js I will update my articles. So for this what I want to do is to use props. So we can just say props dot edit article, and we can pass article in here. So we will create this method edit article, and we will send this edit article to our this article list.js. So till now we haven't created this edit article, we have just created this. Now I'm going to just open my app.js, and in here we are going to create our this edit article. So in here so in this section I can just say const edit article. Now also I need to create two more state for editing the article. So I'm going to just copy this, and this is edited article, and this should be set edited article. Now in my this method I can just say set edit article, and I can pass article in here. So also I need to add this article in this section. Okay, now this edited article can access to the data, for example to the title, to the body, and to the date. And what we want to do is because if you see in our article list.js we are using props.edited article, now we need to tell ReactJS that we are using this edited article. So for this reason we can pass this in our article list. So I can just say, and I can pass it like this. Okay, now before this let me just comment out this. I'm going to just say console.log. For right now let me just say hello world, and let's check that it's working or not. Okay, now if I inspect and okay, now if I click on the update, you can see that we are receiving hello world and hello world in here. Now let's just remove this, and we want to uncomment this. Okay, so now we have our articles information in our this edited article. Now we want to send this edited article to our new component that we want to create. We're going to just call that component form.js. So we can just say form.js, and this will be a functional component, and in here we can just say ref ce. So this is a functional component, and in here we are going to use props. Okay, so now let's just import this in our app.js, and in here I can just say import form from components, and we can just say form, and now let's just use this form in here, and we can just add this in here. So we can just say form also, because we want to send the data, the article data, to this form component, and the data is in our this in here in this edited article. So now we can grab this, and in here we can just say article edited article. Okay, now let's just open our forms, our form.js, and in here we can just say, first we are going to check that if we have the data on the props, so we can just say props.article, and if we have the data, then we can just say props.article.title. So for right now we're going to just print the title in here. Okay, now let me just describe once more. So we have created a new component name of form.js because we want to send our articles information in here. So we are using props, and we want to send the article information from our app.js. We have added our form in the app.js, and article information is in our this edited article and in here, and we have sent this information to the form.js. Okay, now if I for example click on one of these buttons, now you can see that I am receiving Flask and ReactJS full stack. Now the title, because if you remember in the form.js we are saying that props.article and props.article.title. And now if I click on in here, you can see that this is the second title for the Flask and ReactJS. Now instead of showing just this title, we want to show a form. So by clicking on this update buttons, we want to populate a form, for example for the title and also for the body, and after that we want to populate the data in that forms. Now before that, now I've created this edited article and set edited article. Now I want to just make this null, like this. It should be null, and after that I'm going to open my form.js. Now in the form.js we are going to create our form. Now let me just remove this title. So if we have title in the props, in here we can create our form. Now I'm going to just create a div class name, and this should be mb3, and let me close the div. And so in here okay, now in here we can create our first let me just create a label, and I can just say HTML for it is for the title, and we can give a class name. Okay, so class name, and for the class name I'm going to just give it form label, and let's just give it title. This should be like this, class name. Let me cut this, and here we are checking if we have the article and the props. We are just rendering our this form. In the else case, we want to just say null. So let me just bring this in here, and in the else case we can just say null. So now let's create our form in here. Input type text. So input type text, and we can add a class name. So this should be form control, and also we can add a placeholder. So let me just say placeholder, please enter title. Now let's just copy this, and we want to just create one more. Let me just copy this label for the text area. So this is body, and this should be form label, and let me just say, for example, description or body. You can just give it whatever name you want. And this time, instead of let me remove this, we want to create a text area. So text area, so now we can give the class name, and let me just copy this class name from here, and we can add a placeholder. So in the placeholder we can just say please enter description. So now let's check that we have this form or not. So now if I click on this, you can see that I'm receiving the form title and description, and right now it's ReactJS form, it's HTML form. It's HTML form. We want to convert this to the ReactJS form. Now for this also I need to give a row for this text area. I think row 5. Okay, so now let's create some more state in here, and in this section, so I can just say const title, set title, and use state. We can give it an empty string. We want to create another one in here, so I can just say body and set body. Okay, so now because we want to receive our title and body from the props we are receiving, by this reason we need to use a use effect hooks in here. So in here I can just say or first let me show you. First I'm going to just do it in here, so I can just say props dot article dot title, and let me just do this for the descriptions or body like this. Okay, now in our input type in here we need to add a value, so we can just say value, and for the value we want to add title in here, and also we need to add an on change for this because we want to for changing the data. So for right now let me just add another value for the this text area, and I can just say body. Okay, now let's check. So user status not defined, and we can just say use state so because we are using user state hooks in here, and by this reason we need to add user state in here. And now let's check. So cannot read property of the title. Now it's because if you see now let me just show you. If you see in our app.js, and app.js this edited article in here, it's null, and we're sending this edited article to the form.js. By this reason, first we need to check in here, and there is from there, and in here before sending the data to the form.js we need to check in this section. So let me just say, and here we can just say if we have the edited article, so edited article, so if we have that we want to just show the form and send the data like this, and in the else case we are going to make it null. So we are going to just check if we have the edited article, we are just rendering the form, and we want to and we are going to send this data to the form.js. In the else case we are going to just return null. Now if we see, so now okay, now we don't have any error, and if I click on update you can see that the data is populated in here, and we have the this, but you cannot bring change to this. You can see that I cannot bring change. Now let's add an on change for the these input fields in here, and so in this section we can just add an on change. So we can just say on change, and it is an arrow function, and we can just say set title e.target.value, and let's do the same for our text area, and I can just say set body, and on change set body e.target.value. And also let me change this to rows. I think it's rows because I'm not seeing the row 5, and I think it's rows. Yeah. Now also let me just or there's no problem. Now let's just check. Okay, now you can see. So if I click let me just refresh this, and now if I click on this you can see that I am receiving the title and also the description. Now I can bring change to this like this. Okay, now the last thing that we need to add, that is a click but in here, an updating button. So for this we are going to just create a button. So I can just say button, and let me just close the button, and this should be update, and we need to add a class name, and the class name is btn success, and we can just give a margin top 3. Okay, now let's add an on click for this, for updating the data. I can just say on click, and let's just say update article. Let's create this update article in here. So I can just say const update article, and it's a row function. Now we can update add our updating codes in here, but it's good to create another file or another component for our API services. So I'm going to just open my components, and in here I can just say API service.js, and in here I'm going to create my codes. So I can just say export default class API service. So this is a class, and we're exporting that, and in here we can create our update. So static update article, and we want to pass ID and body because we want to update according to the ID, and we can just return fetch. So now let me just copy okay, now let me just copy this from here, or we can just grab this whole code and paste it in this where is it? Okay, now this is my API service. Okay, now the method is put, and the URL is if you see my app.py, for the route for the updating, we have this update, and we can update according to the ID. So now in here we can just change this to, first we need to change this to backticks, and we can just say update $ID. So the method is put, and with the headers we have, and also we need to add the body. So we can just say body and JSON dot stringify, and we can pass our body in here, and also we can just say .then. Let me just make it in here. So .then resp.json. So now we have created our update article, and it's time to add this in our update article method. Now if I open my form.js, now in here I have created this, and I can so first I need to import API service. So I can just say import API service from components, and this is API service, and in here I can just say API service dot and update article. Let me just say it's update article. Yeah, update article, static update article. Now first we need to add the ID, so it is props.article.id. So because we want to update according to the ID, and we can add ID in here. And for the body we want to add our title and also body. Now we can just say .then, and response, for right now we can just say console.log and the response. And also if there was an error you can just say .catch error console.log the error. So now let's just check that it is working or not. So cannot resolve, module not found, so sorry, it's dot component. Now we can check. So now we're going to click on this update. So we have a warning, it's HTML warning, and let's just check in the form. It should be in the form.js, and yeah, it's not HTML form, it's HTML4. By this reason it's complaining. Okay, now we have our this in here, the our title and description. Let's just say updated, and if I click on update, so we are receiving from has been blocked by course policy, and we should not receive this error because we have already added the course policy. Maybe the problem is from the URL, so update it, and if I click on update, so now let's check the URL. I think the main problem is in our API service. Alright guys, now we're receiving error, and because we have done a silly mistake. Now if you've seen here in the content type, I'm using applications/JSON. Now it's not applications. Let me just remove this S, and by this reason we are receiving the error from cross origin. Now now let's check our data that we can update. Right now we are if you see, we are just saying console.log the response, and now let's just refresh our this page, and this time it will work because it was just a simple mistake. And okay, now if I click on update, now this time I'm going to just say updated, and if I click on update button, and now we can see that the data is updated, and you can see that the title is updated. Now if I refresh my page, this should be updated. Now let me just refresh my page, and you will see that my title is updated. Now you can see that this is updated. Now instead of console.log, what I want to do is to send this data, this response, to my app.js, and I want to refresh my UI. So for this, in the form.js, we are going to just remove this console.log, and in here we are going to just say props dot for example, you can just call it, I'm going to just call it, for example, updated data. So updated data, and we want to pass the response in here. Okay, so now let's just create our this updated data in our app.js. So now in here I can just say const updated data, and we can just pass article in here. So now in this section, in the updated, first we want to check, so I'm going to just create a const new article in here, and I'm going to just say articles.map. So first let me just iterate over my articles, and I can just say my article, and after doing this, now I can check if I can say that my article .id is according to the article.id. I want to return the article. In the else case, I can return my article. So my article, and after that I need to set this new article to the articles. So I can just say set articles, and I want to just set this new article. And also, because we are sending this updated data method to the form.js, and we need to add this updated data method in our form in here. and I can just say updated data and updated data. So now let's check that it's working or not. Now let me click on this update in here, and I want to update this. Okay, now let me just remove this updated, and I can just click on the update, and it's not okay. Now you can see that this is updated without refreshing the page. Now let me just show you once more, because I thought that it's not working. So let me just click on this update, and in here I can just change this to RactJS, and let me just change this is the second title for Flask. We are updating, and if I click on the update, and you can see that this is updated, we are updating. So now it's working. And here we have a problem. Now right now you can see that we have in here, if I click on this, you can see that it's not changing, it's just in this title. We want to change this by updating, by clicking on every button, and we want to change this. So for this we are going to just open our form.js. Now instead of doing this, we want to create a use effect hook in here. So use effect, and in here let's create our use effect hook. So I can just say use effect, and it is an arrow function we need to create, and we can just say set title, and let me just pass this in here. And also we can just say set body, and for the set body also we need to just add the body. So I can just make it like this, and we want it should be according to the props.article. So in here we can specify props.article. Okay, so now let's just check the new functionality. Okay, now if I click on this button, you can see that I am receiving the first title and also description. If I click on this, you can see that I am receiving this, and I can just update this, and I can click on this, and you will see that now this is updated. Now let's learn that how we can insert data to our backend, to our Flask backend, using ReactJS frontend. So now before starting our main topic, now in my app.js, when I have fetched the data in here, I have used applications/JSON. It's not applications, but it's application, even though there was no problem and we have fetched the data, but it's good to use application/JSON. Now, so for this, if you see in here, if I click on update button, I have a form in here with the populated data for the title and description. Now I want to use this form for inserting the data, and this time I don't want to populate the data, and I want to use the same form. Now for this, what we want to do is to we are going to open our app.js file, and in here we need to create our button. So I want to create a button in here for inserting the data. So this is my div class name app, and we are going to just create another div class name, and I'm going to just call it call, and let's close the div, and I need to create another div in here. So this, okay, now this is div. Okay, now let's create another div class name, and it should be call. Yeah, this is row and that's call, so row and also call. Let's just close the div. Okay, now in the first column we are going to add this h1 tag like this, and I'm going to just copy this and paste it once more, and this time in here I'm going to use a button. So let me just remove this, and I can create my button, and I can just say insert article, and I can give a class name. So the class name is btn success, and also I need to give an on click, and I want to open my form. So in here I can just say on click, and on click I want to create a method of open form. Now by using this open form method, I want to open the same form of my updating, but this time I don't want to populate the data. Now let's create this open form, and I can just create that in here. So I can just say const open form, and in here we can use set edited article. So set edited article, and now this is the place that our data is located, and we can just make the title, so it's an object, to null, and also the body to null. Okay, so now let's check that it's working or not. Okay, now you can see that we have insert article button. If I click on this, you can see the form is populated and we don't have the data in here, it's empty. Now we have a problem here. You can see that the button is also update. We want to change this to, for example, publish or insert. Now we need to open our form.js, and here we are going to check. Now we are going to update according to the ID. Now we want to check if we have ID, that's update button, and if we don't have ID, that is insert button. So in here, in the section where I have my button, I can just say if I have props.article.id. So if I have the ID, I'm going to just show this button like this. And in the else case, in here, if I don't have the ID, I want to show the button. So we have an error in here, expression expected. So we can just add this in here, and we can just copy the button. So now if you don't have the ID, that so if we have the ID, that's update, and if we don't have the ID, that's insert article. So now let's just change the method to insert, and in here I can just say insert. Okay, so now let's just copy this insert article, and we need to create this insert article in here. So I can just say const insert article like this, and now let's just create our insert article. So we are going to open our we need to open our API service. We need to create our insert article in here, yeah, in this section, and I think I can just copy this like this and paste it in here, and we are going to just bring some changes. So this is insert article, and I don't need the ID. I want to just should be body, and this time if we see our app.py file for inserting, now this is the add route. We have add route in here, and we can change this to add, and we don't need the ID. So like this. Also we need to remove this. So the method is post. We have headers, and we have a body, and in here we want to stringify the body, and after that we are receiving the dot response and response.json. So now let's just add this in our form.js. So we're going to open our form.js, and in here we want to call our API service. So we can just say API service dot insert article, and in the insert article we need to pass the title and also the body, and also we can just say dot then and response. And in here I'm going to just say console.log the response, and if there was an error I can grab that in the catch block. So I can just say error console.log the error. So now let's check that it's working or not. So now if I click on the insert article, you can see I have a form, and you can see that the button is changed to the insert. If I click on the update, you can see that we have update. But if I click on the insert, I have my insert mechanism here. Now let's just add the new data. So you can just say I'm adding the new title in here from ReactJS front end, and let's change this to description, and let's just copy this. Now if I click on the insert, and you can see that the data is added, and if I refresh my page, I should see a new data in here. And if I come down, you can see that I'm adding the new title in here from ReactJS frontend. Now right now it's working. What we want to do is to notify our app.js. So for adding the data, we want to update our UI. Now for this, instead of console.log in here, we are going to just use props. So we can just say props.inserted article, and we want to pass response in here. Now we will create this inserted article in our app.js because using this we want to notify our app.js. So now let's just create this inserted article in our app.js, and after the form I can just say const inserted article, and I'm going to just pass article in here. Okay, now let's create const new articles, and I can just first I need to copy my all articles, and after that I can add the article in here. Using the separate operator, I'm going to just copy the all articles, and after that we need to set this new articles to the article. So we can just say set articles, and we can add our new articles in here. So now let's just check our new functionality that it's working or not. Okay, now I'm going to click on the insert article, and you can see that I have my form in here. Let's add new data, and if I click on the insert, so I'm not seeing the now the UI is not updating, and let's refresh. We have the data, yeah, we have, but the UI is not refreshing. Let's check that where is the problem. Now the problem is this, that we have created this, but we haven't sent this to the form.js. Now in here you can see we are using props.inserted article. Now we need to pass this in our form in here. We have so inserted article, and this is inserted article. Now it should work. If we check, okay, now if I click on the insert article, and we can just say testing our front end, and now if I click on the insert article, now you can see that the data is added and the UI is refreshed automatically. And we can add another one, for example, some more data, and if I insert, so you can see that the data is added in here. Alright guys, now let's work on our last functionality, and that's deleting the article. So right now we can update, we can insert article, and we can retrieve the data. Now let's just learn about updating, not updating, but deleting the data. So we have already created a delete button in here, and now in the article list.js, so we have our delete button. Now let's just add an on click, and in here it is an arrow function, and we can just say delete article, and let's just pass article in here. Now let's create this delete article in here. So let me just, in this section we can just say const delete article, and we can pass article. So now we need to create our deleting functionality in the API service. So I'm going to just open my API service, and in there I want to create my delete functionality. So let's just open our API service, and in here we have insert, and let me just copy this and paste it in at the bottom. So we don't need body, we need just ID, because we want to delete according to the ID, and we can change this to delete. So return fetch, and this is, if you see our app.py, and the route for deleting is delete. So you can see that we can delete according to the ID. Okay, now let's just add delete in here. So we want to delete according to the ID. The method is delete, and we don't need body, and we don't need any response in here. It's just a simple method is delete, and this is the content type. Okay, so now let's just open our article list.js. And in here first we need to import, so we can just say import API service from dot and it is on the components, so components, and that is API service. Now let's just say API service dot delete article, and we need to pass the ID, so we can just say article.id, and in here we can just say .then, and it will be an empty response. So now we need to notify our app.js that for example an article is deleted. props.delete article, and we can pass the article in here. So now let's just create this delete article in our app.js, and we will send that through the article list. We will send that through the app.js to the article list. So now in here I can just create this method, and I can just say const, and we can pass the article in here. And now we are going to check, we need to filter the data, so we can just say const new articles, we can just say articles dot filter, and we can just say my article, and in here we can check that if we have ID, we can say that my article dot ID, and if it is according to the article.id, so by this reason we can just return false, and in the else case we want to return true. And also after this we need to set this new articles to the to the article state that we have. So we need to set that to this set the new article to this set articles. So now let's just come down, and in here we can just say set articles to the new articles. So now let's just save our files, and now we can test our new functionality. So now I want to delete, for example, this testing our front end. If I click on the delete, and So article is not defined, I think. Yeah, we have error in here. Let's just say article.id. So testing our front end, and let's just click on the delete. And again we have error, props.delete article is not a function. Okay, it's because we need to now send this to the from app.js. We need to send this delete article. So let's open our app.js. So this is our delete article, and in the article list we can just say delete article and delete article. Now we should delete the data. And if you see that previously the data is deleted, and now if I click on the delete again, so you can see that the data is deleted and we don't have that data in the front end. Now if I check my backend, you can see that in my MySQL database I have just 4 data. Now for example, I want to remove this one, some more data, and this one I want to delete this. And let's just first for example, if I want to update, I can update this. And first let me just work on the update. So if I click on the update, and you can see that this is updated. And if I see my MySQL database, and you will see that this is updated. Now if I click on the delete, you will see that this data is deleted. Now we have just 3 data, and if I check my MySQL database, and now I have just 3 data in here. So like this you can create your simple backend REST API in Flask, and after that you can integrate with the ReactJS. If you like the video, you can just subscribe to my channel, like the video, and also if you want to support me, you can support me on my Patreon page. I have added the link in the video description.